When someone goes out of their way to humiliate you in front of others, it's tempting to internalize that moment, to question yourself, to wonder what you did wrong or whether you truly deserve that kind of treatment. But the truth is, most public humiliation has very little to do with you and everything to do with the person delivering it. People who are truly strong, grounded, and confident don't need to diminish others to feel important. They don't need an audience to validate their superiority because they're secure in who they are. So when someone mocks you, calls you out, or tries to embarrass you in front of others, it's often a mask, a disguise for their own insecurity, fear, or jealousy. Think about it. If you were truly insignificant to them, why would they go out of their way to target you? Why waste time or energy trying to put you down unless there's something in you they find threatening or uncomfortable? Sometimes it's your potential that unsettles them. Sometimes it's your discipline, your silence, or your focus. Whatever it is, they're trying to project their weakness onto you, hoping you'll carry the weight of their brokenness. And in many cases, they want an audience for it, because humiliating someone in private isn't enough. They want the reaction. They want the laughs, the gasps, the sense of power that comes from watching someone else shrink, because they're terrified of ever standing tall themselves. So remember this: when you're humiliated in public, don't immediately look inward and wonder what's wrong with you. Look at the source. Look at the tone, their history, their habits. More often than not, their behavior is a mirror of their own pain, not a reflection of your value. It's projection, not truth. The strongest people in the world, those with real character, real leadership, and real self-worth, never have to humiliate anyone to prove their power. They build others up. They challenge them in private. They show respect even in disagreement. So if someone chooses to humiliate you, it says far more about the limits of their character than the measure of yours. One of the most common reasons people humiliate others publicly is because they want to establish control, not just over the moment, but over your mindset. Humiliation is their way of drawing a line in the sand, of reminding you who they think is in charge. It's not about a mistake you made or something you said. It's about power. And the moment they feel that power slipping, they lash out to reclaim it. It could be a manager belittling you in a meeting, a teacher shaming a student in front of the class, a so-called friend making you the punchline in a group. It's all about control, about tipping the balance in their favor by making you feel smaller. And once they do it, they watch how you respond. If you lower your head, stay quiet, or second guess yourself, they feel validated. They believe they've won. But let's call it what it really is: insecurity wrapped in authority. People who truly lead, leaders in business and sports and life, don't control others by force. They inspire, they motivate, they teach. But when someone humiliates you to make a point, that's not leadership. That's emotional manipulation dressed up as dominance. And it often happens in front of others, not by accident, but by design. Public humiliation sends a message, not just to you, but to everyone watching. I hold the power here. Why do they do it? Because somewhere deep down they feel threatened. They see something in you they can't quite contain. Maybe it's your talent, your growth, or even your calm. And so, rather than rising to meet you at your level, they drag you down to theirs. Control is a fragile illusion for people like this. They need constant reinforcement. And the fastest way to feed that illusion is to make someone else feel helpless. It steals your voice, weakens your posture, and shakes your confidence if you let it. But here's the hidden truth. If someone feels a need to control you through shame, it means they've already lost control over something in themselves. Maybe it's their fear of being exposed. Maybe it's jealousy masked as authority. Whatever it is, their need to dominate reveals their inability to lead. Public humiliation isn't strength, it's desperation. And the people who use it as a weapon are showing you that they feel powerless without it. There's a silent resentment that brews in people when they see someone evolving, especially if they're standing still. Growth, when witnessed by those who've chosen comfort over progress, becomes a threat. And not because you've done anything wrong, but because your very presence disrupts the illusion they've built around themselves. See, when you start to level up mentally, physically, emotionally, it creates contrast. It highlights effort, exposes complacency. And for those who settled, your movement feels like judgment, even if you've said nothing at all. That's the irony. You're just trying to be better, to reach new levels, to escape the average, and somehow that becomes offensive to people who stop trying. And instead of looking inward, instead of asking themselves why they're stagnant, they project that frustration outward onto you. They laugh at your goals. They criticize your mindset. They try to poke holes in your discipline, but it's not critique, it's camouflage. They're hiding their envy and sarcasm. They're masking their regret with mockery because your growth makes them uncomfortable in their own skin. So what do? They try to humiliate you publicly. Why? Because if they can knock you off course just once, they get to feel better about standing still. If they can shake your confidence, distract your focus, or make you question your progress, it gives them temporary relief from their own guilt. But here's what they don't realize. Growth doesn't just build skill, it builds strength. Every time they try to bring you down, you're developing more resilience. Every attempt to embarrass you is met with a quiet, powerful reminder. They're watching from the sidelines while you're running laps. They want you to shrink because your expansion reminds them of what they've ignored. You become a living example of what's possible, and that's painful for someone who's given up on themselves. They may not admit it out loud, but deep down, your growth is proof that excuses aren't true, and that potential doesn't vanish. It just gets buried under fear. So don't expect applause from people who refuse to evolve. Don't expect support from those who are threatened by your elevation. Let's keep going, because nothing exposes envy faster than someone who refuses to stop growing. Some people don't humiliate you because they hate you. They do it because they need to be seen. Insecure people thrive off attention the way strong people thrive off purpose. They crave the spotlight, and if they can't earn it through excellence, they'll take it through drama. Humiliating someone, especially in front of others, is the fastest way to make themselves the center of attention. It's a cheap move, but it works for a moment. They crack a joke at your expense. They call you out in a meeting, not to offer real feedback, but to stir the room. They wait until there's an audience, not because the moment requires it, but because their ego demands it. To them, it's a performance. And you're the target because they believe putting you down will lift them up, at least in the eyes of the crowd. But make no mistake, this isn't confidence. This is insecurity in disguise. People who are genuinely confident don't seek validation through humiliation. They don't tear others down to be seen. They are seen because of who they are, not because of who they shame. What you're dealing with here is someone addicted to attention. And like any addict, they'll do whatever it takes to get their fix, even if it means humiliating someone else to feel important for 5 seconds. That's all it is to them. A hit of power, a flash of laughter, a ripple of reaction. That brief moment when all eyes are on them. But here's the truth they can't outrun. When the room quiets down and the moment passes, they're still empty, still insecure, still needing another scene to feel relevant again. You might wonder why they chose you. Sometimes it's because you're different. You carry yourself with quiet strength. You don't beg for approval. You're focused on your path, not theirs. And that unsettles people who live for the crowd's applause. You're everything they wish they could be, self-contained, purpose-driven, unmoved by noise. So they act out. They poke. They embarrass. Not because you deserve it, but because they can't stand the fact that you don't need what they crave most, attention. You stand on your own. They perform to survive. And when someone sees that you're unshaken by the games, it threatens the only power they thought they had. Because what happens when their audience no longer reacts? What happens when their target doesn't flinch? They lose, not just the crowd, but control over the narrative. There's something about quiet confidence that unsettles insecure people. When you don't react, when you don't play into their drama, when you don't defend yourself with noise, they assume you're weak. But that's where they get it all wrong. Silence isn't weakness, it's discipline, it's control, it's strength under pressure. In a world full of people rushing to be heard, silence becomes power. And not everyone understands that. So when someone tries to humiliate you and you respond with calm instead of chaos, they interpret it as submission. They think they've won because you didn't bite. They think you're broken because you didn't bark back. But what they don't realize is that not everyone fights battles the same way. Some people argue to prove a point. Others let results do the talking. You're not staying quiet because you're scared. You're staying quiet because you're focused. Focused people don't waste energy where it won't grow anything. They don't argue with fools. They don't explain themselves to people who've already decided to misunderstand them. And that terrifies the ones who try to humiliate you. Because if you don't react, they don't get the attention. If you don't engage, they can't control the narrative. And if you don't fall apart publicly, their entire show collapses. They need you to break so they can look strong. They need you to shout so they can play the victim. They need you to react because your silence is a mirror. They see themselves in it, and they don't like what's staring back. Let them underestimate you. Let them think silence means surrender. While they're busy performing, you're preparing. While they're loud in the moment, you're building something that lasts beyond it. Because in the long game, it's not who talks the most who wins. It's the one who acts with purpose, the one who moves in silence and strikes with precision. And when the dust settles, it won't be the loudest person in the room who commands the most respect. It will be the one who didn't need to say a word to prove their strength. Sometimes the real reason people try to humiliate you isn't because they think you're weak. It's because deep down they know you're stronger than they are. They see it in your persistence. They feel it in your presence. And instead of admitting their own shortcomings, they try to derail you with humiliation because your potential scares them. People fear what they can't control. And when someone realizes they can't control you, your mindset, your work ethic, your rise, they do the next thing they can. Try to make you doubt yourself. Public humiliation becomes their last weapon. It's a desperate attempt to throw you off your path, to trigger a reaction, to interrupt your focus, because your progress is moving faster than their comfort zone can handle. You see, unstoppable people don't always look like it on the surface. They're not always the loudest, the most popular, or the ones getting applause right away, but they're consistent, relentless, quietly dangerous, and those watching from the sidelines can sense it. They see how you keep showing up. They notice how you don't fold under pressure. They hear about your wins, your growth, your evolution, and it eats at them. They may not say it out loud, but inside they know you're becoming someone they can't compete with. And that's what really triggers them. Not your flaws, but your momentum. Not your mistakes, but the way you recover. Not your silence, but the force behind it. So they humiliate you, not because it will stop you, but because it's their last hope that maybe, just maybe, it will slow you down. That you'll doubt yourself, that you'll overthink your next move, that you'll shrink just enough to make room for their ego to breathe. But what they don't understand is this: unstoppable people don't quit when they're humiliated. They sharpen, they learn, they use it as fuel, not fear. Every public jab becomes private motivation. Every insult becomes ammunition for the grind. Every attempt to tear you down becomes a blueprint for how high you're about to rise. Because the more they try to stop you, the more they confirm what you already know. They see your power. They just don't know how to handle it. When people insult you, especially in front of others, the first instinct is often to fire back, to explain yourself, to defend your name, your choices, your value. That's human. That's emotional. But here's the truth that winners understand. Words don't stew. You see, the person who tries to humiliate you wants a reaction. They want you flustered. They want you to lose control. Because if you do, they win the moment. But champions, real champions, don't chase momentary applause. They're playing for something bigger, something lasting. And when you're locked in on that bigger vision, you stop fighting with your mouth and start proving with your actions. You don't have to announce your greatness. You don't have to justify your grind. You don't even have to explain your silence. You just show up and let your consistency speak louder than their criticism. Let them laugh. Let them doubt. Let them assume they figured you out. Because one day they'll have to face the reality you built while they were busy running their mouths. When they mocked your idea, you kept building. When they spread rumors, you kept growing. When they tried to humiliate you publicly, you just went back to work. And now they're watching your results in silence, because that's the thing about results. They don't argue. They don't argue. They don't lie. They don't seek approval. Results are cold, unemotional, unapologetic. They either speak for you or they don't. And when they do, when you walk into a room with success that can't be denied, even your enemies have to shut up. That's why you don't need to waste your time proving people wrong with talk. You do it with action, with proof, with legacy. Because people can twist your words, but they can't twist what you've earned. And the beauty of it is this: You don't need to announce your revenge. You don't need to tell anyone you're coming. You just keep your head down, stay focused, and one day, the very people who tried to humiliate you will be forced to acknowledge what they couldn't stop. Let your results be the thunder after their storm of insults. Because in the end, silence backed by success is the loudest statement you'll ever make. Humiliation isn't always about the moment. It's about long-term damage. People who intentionally try to shame you in front of others are often playing a deeper game. They're not just trying to embarrass you. They're trying to alter the way you see yourself. Because when someone attacks your identity publicly, your intelligence, your abilities, your appearance, your background, they're planting a seed. A toxic seed of self-doubt that, if not caught early, can take root and grow. That's the danger. They're hoping that the outside noise becomes your internal voice. They want their words to live rent-free in your mind. They want you to question yourself when no one's looking. They want you to carry their insult like a label until it becomes a limitation. This isn't just about ego. It's psychological warfare. Because if they can get you to believe their lie, if they can get you to adopt their version of you, they never have to lift another finger. You'll start sabotaging yourself. You'll hesitate when opportunity knocks. You'll second guess your gifts. You'll shrink to fit the narrative they created. And the scary part? Sometimes it works. Because when humiliation hits repeatedly, it can wear you down. If you're not grounded, if you haven't anchored your identity in something deeper than opinion, you can start mistaking other people's projections for your truth. That's why they do it in public, because the more witnesses, the more pressure. And the more pressure, the easier it is for shame to take hold. They don't just want to make fun of you. They want to make you forget who you are. But you have to remember this. Your identity is not up for auction. It doesn't belong to anyone else's opinions, titles, or jokes. You define it. You protect it. You live it. The people who try to break your sense of self are often the ones who lost theirs a long time ago. They don't know who they are without someone to tear down. They're not creators. They're critics, not leaders. They're leeches. And they'll use humiliation as a tool to make you feel small enough to stay under their control. But your mind is your fortress. You have to guard it, especially from voices that sound confident, but speak from cowardice. Because once you know who you are, no public insult can rewrite your private truth. Let them talk. Let them try. But never let them convince you that you are less than what you know you are becoming. That public humiliation isn't just a one-on-one attack. It's often a performance meant to sway the crowd. The goal isn't just to make you feel bad. It's to isolate you, to corner you, to strip you of support by convincing others that you deserve to be laughed at, doubted, dismissed. Because here's what manipulators understand. People follow the loudest energy in the room. And if they can turn you into a target, if they can get a laugh, a smirk, a nod of agreement from the people watching, they win a form of psychological ground. Not because they're right, but because they've captured the audience first. That's the real strategy. Get others to join in, even subtly. And now it's not just them against you, it's everyone. Now it feels like the group is against you. Now you're the outsider, the joke, the problem. That's the emotional trap. Because when people feel outnumbered, they often silence themselves. They withdraw. They dim their light just to avoid being picked apart again. And that's exactly what the person humiliating you wants. They want to cut you off from your confidence by isolating you socially. Because if they can take away your voice and your back end, you become easier to control, easier to overlook, easier to defeat. This isn't new. It happens in workplaces, in classrooms, in families, and friend circles. One loud person sets the tone and others fall in line. Not because they agree, but because they don't want to become the next target. It's a chain reaction of fear disguised as agreement. But here's the truth. Real strength isn't about standing with the crowd. It's about standing firm even when the crowd shifts. Especially when the crowd shifts, when you feel the room turn. Don't panic. Don't shrink. Just breathe. Step back mentally. Look at what's happening for what it is. Not a reflection of your worth, but a manipulation of the moment. And here's what they don't expect. They don't expect you to hold your ground with grace. They don't expect you to walk through the fire and not flinch. They don't expect that the very crowd they turned against you might one day turn on them once they realize who the real manipulator was. Because people eventually see the pattern. They notice who always points fingers. They recognize who builds and who breaks. So even if the room is cold now, don't lose your warmth. Even if the silence around you grows louder, don't let it drown out the truth. You don't need a crowd to stand tall. You just need clarity. And when you lead yourself with dignity, when you refuse to stoop to their level, the crowd may not cheer right away, but they'll never forget how you carried yourself in the storm. At the core of every attempt to humiliate you, there's an underlying fear. Not of who you are now, but of who you are becoming. People who try to tear you down don't just see your current success or status, they see your potential. And that potential for them is terrifying. It represents everything they wish they had but never fully committed to pursuing. It's the gap between where they are and where they could have been had they taken the risks, had they stepped out of their comfort zones, had they refused to be average. It's this unspoken fear of unrealized greatness that drives their need to knock you down. They know on some level that if you continue on your current path, you're going to surpass them. And when that happens, it won't just be a matter of comparison. It will expose their complacency. It will force them to confront the fact that they chose security over ambition. The danger is real for them because your potential isn't just a threat to their ego. It's a reminder of everything they could have done but didn't. And that's a hard thing to face. It forces them to question their own choices, their own limitations, their own excuses. But instead of rising to meet that challenge, they try to diminish you, to make you feel small, to distract you from your path, to get you off track. Because if they can convince you to stop dreaming, stop pushing, stop growing, they no longer have to confront their own fear. They no longer have to deal with the guilt of their own stagnation. They might even try to make you feel as though you're wrong for wanting more, for dreaming bigger. They'll throw labels like a too ambitious or unrealistic in your direction, hoping you'll shrink back into mediocrity. But the truth is, you were never meant for small dreams. And the more they try to shame you for having big ones, the more they reveal their own limitations. Because the people who are truly threatened by you are those who can't imagine themselves reaching the same heights. They would rather tear you down than face their own lack of action. They would rather hold you back than confront their own inaction. They fear your potential because they know that if you reach it, you'll leave them behind. That's not just a personal loss, it's a philosophical. It's a challenge to the very story they've been telling themselves. The story that they are where they are because they can't do more, because the world is too hard, because life is about settling. And when they see you continue to rise, they can no longer justify their excuses. Your potential becomes a mirror, and that's the last thing they want to face. But here's the irony. Their fear of your potential is what will ultimately drive you to succeed. You will outgrow their doubts, and you will soar beyond the constraints of their narrow thinking. They can't see the future you're creating. They can't understand the force you're becoming, and their fear will only fuel your progress. Keep moving, keep reaching, keep dreaming, because the more they try to diminish you, the more they reveal that your potential is exactly what they're afraid of. And in the end, the only thing that can stop you is yourself. And that's the truth about humiliation. It's not about you, it's about their insecurities, their fears, and their inability to handle the light you're beginning to shine. But no matter how many times they try to bring you down, no matter how loudly they try to humiliate you, your strength will always speak louder than their noise. Every insult is a chance to rise. Every attempt to break you is an opportunity to prove just how unbreakable you truly are. Because when you choose to keep going, when you refuse to let others define you, when you trust in your own worth, when you stand tall even in the face of ridicule, you show the world that nothing can stop you. Not the words, not the crowds, not the hate, nothing. So let them talk, let them mock. Keep your eyes on your goal, your focus sharp, and your mind unwavering. The only voice that matters is the one that comes from within. The only judgment that matters is the one you place on yourself. And remember this, you were never meant to fit in with those who seek to tear you down. You were born to stand out, to rise above, and to prove once and for all that nothing can stop you. Stay true to who you are, keep moving forward, and let your success be the loudest answer they'll ever hear.